Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to Leadership Beyond the Title. My name is Colin Mahan. I'm the Director of Programs at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit that's building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. As you may have just seen in the chat, the NASDAQ Center, along with our partner Mentor Cloud, launched a free mentor matching platform for entrepreneurs called Mentor Makers. You can create your own advisory board to guide and inspire you with in-the-moment mentorship from topic experts and professionals dedicated to providing exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So find or become a mentor today by using that link in the chat. Mentorship matters to all entrepreneurs. Their success is dependent on it. Quick housekeeping item for this webinar, we're going to open up for live Q&A near the end of the event, so please submit those questions for our speaker in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. We'll try to get to them all. Now, none of what we do here at the center could be possible without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, BPM, and HubSpot. We're grateful and humbled by their contributions. Now, during these still, in so many ways, we're still on Zoom, unique times. We're curious on how sentiment is among the entrepreneurs that we work with. So I'm going to launch a quick poll to just let us know, how are you feeling about your business today? We use this information to understand the wellness and support structures that we should be building for you, the entrepreneurs that we serve. So appreciate you all participating. And welcome from Bakersfield. Hello, everybody. Awesome. Well, I'm going to end this poll and share these results. Looks like optimism is barely in the lead, but totally understand there's a little bit of survival mode and some anxiety out there. We understand the entrepreneurial journey is a lonely one. So hopefully our content today and the ones in the future will help alleviate some of those sentiments. So without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our special guest in the chat. Shalia Stafford is a podcast host, leadership translator, and founder of Flipping the Script. Shalia, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me, Colin.
So excited to learn from you. Over to you, and I'll see you back for Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen here. Alrighty. So I am so excited to be here with you guys today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is that you find yourself. My name is Shalia, and I'm excited to be your host to take you on the journey to explore how to organically share your entrepreneurship story. Storytelling has been a critical compass for me in my journey to not only help me break the boundaries of adversity, but also while breaking the cycle and launching into entrepreneurship. I believe that stories have the power to give flight to our dreams or to weigh them down. And today, I want to position you to take on your boldest adventure to fuel your dreams and give flight to what matters most. A little bit about me. So I am a mom, a wife, a fur mom, and an ex-corporate sales leadership executive. I'm going to move this here so you guys don't have to see that the whole time. And also the host of Leadership Beyond the Title, which is a podcast. And I am also the founder of Flipping the Script, where we make leadership personal without sugarcoating the hard parts of the human experience. Our mission is to create a conscious space for adventurous professionals to explore their leaderships and their story and the strategies that help them create generational wealth and health in alignment with their stories. Okay, so if science does its job, which oftentimes it does, odds are you're going to forget a grand percentage of what we cover here today. And if you remember nothing at all, I want you to remember this, that while storytelling has been a very powerful tool, not only in our past, in our present, and it will continue to be in the future, what it ultimately is, it's an opportunity to create a connection to the human experience. So if you remember nothing at all, remember again, stories create a connection to the human experience, and great storytelling is about taking a piece of the human condition, things like birth, growth, emotionality, aspirations, conflict, failure, and conveying it through your unique situation. Okay, so I want to take a quick poll in the chats. So we can all go to the chats. I want to hear from you. When it comes to storytelling, do you feel more like an A or a B? An A being someone that is excited and feels ready to tell their story, or are you more of a B who shows up to the idea of storytelling but feels daunted about how to begin to share their story with their customers, with investors, and with the world? So take to the chat. I want to hear from you guys. Are you more of an A or a B? It depends. Yes, I know it depends on the context, right? It also depends on what stories we have and how we're thinking about them and who we're sharing them with. Fun fact, A in this picture is my little entrepreneur and who I aspire to be when I grow up. This is my son, and he's always ready to take on any task. Whereas me, I was triple dog dared and terrified of sharing this experience with him. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of A's. I want to be like you guys, still working towards it. Now, as we get into this, it's fun to see your guys' choices here because, again, I find courage in it. But let's go ahead and take a look at the agenda and what we're going to cover today. I want to take you to a fireside chat. Let's go there for a moment. It's a beautiful evening with just the right amount of chill in the air, that the warm fire welcomes you into a great conversation. And that's today with your happy drink, and you're joining entrepreneurs just like you who are exploring the question of storytelling and business. We're going to dive in. I want you to bring in your questions and thoughts to the chat. This is meant to be a collaborative connection. And as you think of more questions as we explore the content, I want you to, if we're not able to answer all of them, keep them in mind because we are going to have a Q&A at the end. But today we're going to be exploring what are the principles that drive authentic storytelling, and how do we craft our stories to inspire action? And then how do we use our stories on our entrepreneurial journey? So let's go ahead and kick things off with the big picture. The big picture is that most of us have been on this journey for a very long time and trying to understand what is the story that we're creating, and it's evolved over time. So odds are you've probably never been here before. However many years old you are, you've never been this age at this stage with this unique business adventure in front of you. And a lot of us are trying to figure it out as we go. But in order to understand our stories, we have to take a step back and look at that big picture perspective to better understand where it is that we're going into our next chapters. And so what I want you to think about as we're moving along in the presentation, if you were to break up your life into 3 chapters up until this point in life, what would you name each chapter? I want you to think about what those names would be as we continue on with the content today. And then I'd love to hear some of those chapters at the end of our Q&A. Okay, I have some homework before we get into it. It's kind of daunting. For those of you who chose B, like me, when it comes time to share in our story, we can kind of feel like there's so much to share, or we don't even know what to share. Or if, as to share our stories, we have to have big content, we have to have these big momentous experiences that happen. But in reality, that's not the point of storytelling, and that's not what we need. In order to answer the question of what do we share and how do we share it, it's imperative, again, to take that big picture perspective so that we understand the experiences that are honing in our values and helping us create the stories. What I challenge everybody to do is to take some time to audit your story. So if you are finding yourself reflecting, what story do I share? How do I share my story? This is part 1. Part 1 is audit your story. Out of your story, you want to create and name those 3 chapters. That activity that I just gave you guys, what would you name the 3 chapters? If you were to take your entire life up until this point and divide it into 3 chapters, what would you name it? After you've gotten to that part, you want to identify the values that not only align with your personal life, but also your business. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take those values and we're going to look for experiences where we can share stories from those values. And that's what helps create that authentic experience, not only for us, but for the clients that we are sharing the story with, investors, and wherever else we get to share those stories. And then ultimately, once we have defined that, we get to go in to create structure around our stories. As we move forward in this exercise, you're going to see how I did this with my story. I'm going to share how I audited my story, the 3 chapters that I created, and the values that align with my business after doing that. So what I want to do next is I want us to go back into chat, because we're going to take a big picture perspective here. Again, a lot of this is about us going deep into our stories. And in order to understand where we are right now with our chapter, I have a quick question for you. So if your 80-year-old or 109-year-old self had access to a time machine, and they arrived at this very moment in time, they climb out of this time machine and they sit next to you and they give you advice, what would they say based on your current chapter of life? What advice would they give you? So head on over to the chat and share. What would your 109-year-old self give you as advice based on your current chapter? Just keep going. Oh, I like that. It reminds me of Finding Nemo. That's one that I actually have as a reminder for myself. Just keep swimming. You're enough and don't sweat the small stuff. I love that. Be kind and honest. It's important. So what we're finding through a lot of the advice that our 109-year-old self would give to us is the experiences that we're seeking in our current chapter to bring to life a story that we'll one day be proud of. Living life to the fullest. I love that, Debbie. Thank you for sharing. That's an example of being able to engage all the moments and the experiences that serve your growth, to not be confined to the comfort of our comfort zone. And so as you're looking at your current chapter for that particular advice, you can start to look for what are the experiences that I can start to take part of that is going to help me bring my authentic story to life. And then how can I begin to share those moments? Everything that looks like a fire isn't always a fire. I love that. It's very true, and one that's hard to remember in the moment. Okay. So let's step into my story. When I look at my story, what I want to do is share how I've broken down my story into 3 chapters to help you better understand the big picture. Once you've done the homework of auditing your story, you're going to move into creating structures of your story. But for my story, the 3 chapters that I'm going to share with you today is chapter 1, which for me was breaking the cycle. Chapter 2 was the shift that happened once I quote unquote, broke this cycle. And chapter 3 was the awakening. So when I took the time to audit my story, these are the themes that I found were relevant to the important experiences that align with my values. But once I have those themes, the next thing I want to do is to create that story structure and how I share it. And as you hear my story, the 3 story structures that you're going to hear are called the 3 C's. And that what the 3 C's allow us to do is to take specific experiences that are based on how you define the chapters in your life and share those experiences. So for example, my first chapter, which is called Breaking the Cycle, I'm going to share a challenge that I had, a choice that I had to make, and a change that happened. Now, these can be done interchangeably. You don't have to start with challenge. You can start with the change that occurred within you, a choice that you had to make that then led to challenges. But each of these will lead you into your next chapter after you have taken that time to define them. Remember, great stories require a structure to help our listeners better understand our stories, and that structure, you're going to see it play out as I share my story here with you guys now. So as we go into chapter 1, this was breaking the cycle. When I arrived to Georgia, we were homeless. We lived in a shed at the farmer's market where my parents sold produce. And while we didn't have much to live off of, we had the opportunity to create a living through the produce that we sold. Eventually, we were able to upgrade into a hotel. And then from there, we had a home. And while the home may have not had furniture and our fridge didn't always have food, we had the opportunity to now have a home that we could call ourselves. But it wasn't long before I realized that I was growing up in a generational cycle of generational poverty, neglect, and fixed mindsets that plagued my family for generations. When I was only 8 years old, a SWAT team stormed our house, pointing guns at the entire family because there was a lot of crime happening around the area and they were looking for someone. And with that being said, this was a constant that we experienced. Not only that, we had my father who was incarcerated at a young, throughout his entire life at a young age and through adulthood. I had my oldest sister who left the house when she was young because she got pregnant at an early age. And my brother who at 14 was hanging around with the wrong crowd and was incarcerated. My mom who was forced to wed before her time. And I noticed that there was a commonality between the stories of what was happening. There was a lot of pain that we were experiencing, and everybody was well-intentioned, but not really understanding the strategy that was going to help us move forward. And so I realized at a young age that I had a choice to make. And that choice for me was that I wanted to break the cycle so that our story wouldn't be in vain and we wouldn't be another broken family, another statistic, another story lost in time. And in order to do so, I knew that I had to filter my experiences through a different lens. But little did I know, eventually the cycle was going to catch up to me when I faced the challenge of becoming a mother at a young age myself. And I knew at that moment that my whole world was about to change. Here I was with no experience, no money, and no job, no ability to move this idea of breaking the cycle forward. I didn't feel ready enough. I didn't feel confident enough. And I didn't feel that I had the experience to be able to move forward, not only as a mother, but as a human. And I questioned my ability. And I remember looking for my first job and thinking, there's no way that I can get out of this car because I felt that I didn't even know how to ask for the job. But in the backseat of my car was my baby. And I knew that if I didn't choose to engage with this uncomfortable moment, that I was choosing to make him a statistic. And that's not what I wanted. And with that, I moved forward to challenge my comfort zone in every area of my life. And that for me has meant that I became the first in my family of 6 kids to graduate high school. Y'all, this is not even college, this is high school. My parents have a middle school education. And from there on, I was able to experience what college was like and also became the first to figure out the reins of corporate America. And now as a first generation entrepreneur, I'm choosing to continue that to show my children what it takes to not only grow within your career or in entrepreneurship, if that's what they choose, but also in generally with whatever story they choose to create that feels authentic to them. I was very fortunate that within my story, I was able to grow in my career. And within 6 months of my job, within every company that I worked with, I had a promotion. By 18, I was leading a $500,000 practice. And by the time that I was 23, I was making over 6 figures at a multi-billion-dollar corporation where I led sales teams all over the nation. And I felt like I had broken the cycle. But in reality, what I was learning that I was breaking one stage of the cycle. And I knew that there was more that I wanted to do with the kind of impact that I was able to do within my work and with the expertise that I had. And that's where I realized that I wouldn't make my 80-year-old self happy unless I chose to dive in and take the risk of starting my own business. And that's where the shift comes in chapter 2. And so I was confronted with the challenges of my career before that and learning how to overcome the boundaries of what it takes to grow in your career, as well as what does it take to leave everything you've ever created within your career and to jump into entrepreneurship. This is what it felt like. These are my kids, and these are my fur babies. And trying to uncover what the choice was going to look like for me if I chose to leave this career that I worked so hard to create, with the idea that I wanted to change the trajectory of my family and create a new chapter for us. And so this is me starting my company with my kiddos in the background. For those of you who are parents and understand what it was like virtual learning, and even those of you who don't have babies, you guys know what it was like during COVID. COVID was an experience for all of us that we shared. And it was a tough time when we first decided to launch into the company, but I knew that it was worth it because our chapter 3 was going to be entrepreneurship. And that's where the awakening happened for me. And I started to create a shift and impact with the company. And I had the opportunity to impact people with leadership strategies beyond just what it was for me in my company or working within a company. These are my kids, the next generation of entrepreneurs who have already started their business and who have also gone to children's business fairs. And that was really important to me to have them also expound on what that looks like. As an entrepreneur today, I am faced with many challenges that I still have to uncover and what it looks like to build a plane while you're flying it. But I know these challenges are going to lead to a change that's going to allow us to give into chapter 4 and what that's going to look like. As I was exploring my story, there was a lot of values for me that arose from it. And what I want you to do when you explore your story, I want you to also think about the values that you find within your story. And for me, the values have been growth, creativity, exploration, adventure, courage, transparency, and also humbleness, because these are the experiences that I'm constantly looking forward so that I can share these lived moments that I'm having in my own personal life with my customers because they are infused within my business. So the values that we have, they drive our story. But the experiences that we choose to engage with, those are what bring our stories to life. And as we continue to look at how can we bring our stories more to life, I really want you guys to focus in on doing the first part of the homework, which is audit your story. And to remember to create those chapter names, find the themes within the chapter names, and then look at the values that have driven your story. It is those values that are infused and aligned with your business where you're going to look for specific examples to share when it comes time to your business. Okay, the power of storytelling. This is where it gets exciting. The power of storytelling is about driving that universal human experience. And what do we even mean when we say storytelling? And how does storytelling inspire action? The point is that you've been telling stories for a long time. We've been telling stories in our head. We've been telling stories with friends, but the transition to storytelling in business requires that we capture the attention of the brain. And let me tell y'all, that is challenging. And I want to put your attention to the test to show you the power of trying to get attention of our brain. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch a video that requires our focus. You're going to see a blue vehicle, and I want you to capture how many changes happen to this blue vehicle as the screen is flashing. You may not hear the audio, but if you don't, I can narrate it. Is the audio good? Did you guys hear that? Perfect. Okay.
To test just how much attention the attention-stealing design of the new Skoda Fabia actually steals, we left one parked on this ordinary road in West London. We wanted to see if its sharp crystalline shapes, bold lines, and lower, wider profile would attract the desired level of attention. Will the 17-inch black alloy wheels stop passers-by in their tracks? Will the angular headlights attract the attention of other road users? Will a crowd gather to check out its fresh, sporty look? Well, not quite. But did the attention-stealing design distract you from noticing that the entire street has been changing right before your very eyes? Don't believe us? Have another look. Did you spot the van changing to a taxi? How about the scooter changing to a pair of bicycles? Or the lady holding a pig? Let alone the fact that the entire street is now completely different. Didn't think so.
How many of you spotted all the changes that was going around? Oh, I see one of you saw the shirtless person. It is mind-blowing, Diana. So here's the thing. Whenever we give the brain a task, it is going to hone in and focus on that task. And everything around it kind of becomes muted. And so when we get to the point where we begin to share the stories of our business and the values within our business, it's really important that we structure it in a way that allows people to really see the values that are driving the impact that we want to create, because holding attention is becoming so much harder. Can any of you feel the shirt on your shoulder, or the blood that's going through your veins in your ankle right now? Odds are you probably can't. And that's because the brain is a powerful machine, and it's built to help process the many functions required to function. And not only that, research has shown that there is decision fatigue right now. 41% of people feel overwhelmed by the amount of decisions. I mean, can anybody relate to that when we're even having to decide what are we going to eat? Our subconscious is already processing so many thoughts and choices throughout the day that when it comes time to decide what company are we going to choose to align with, and how are we going to compare one business to another, one founder story to another, it's overwhelming. It's so overwhelming that people just prefer to go to a friend and say, hey, who do you recommend? Not only that, we're cognitively overwhelmed, but our attention span is actually decreasing. Humans have an average span of 8.25. That's less than a goldfish. So even if we were fortunate enough to capture the attention from the beginning of our listeners, of our clients, of whoever it is we're sharing our story with, working memory is also working against us, meaning we were able to capture someone's attention, but odds are they're going to forget most of what was captured if it is not continuously brought up or relevant to them. And the percentage of that has ranged by anywhere from 90% after 2 weeks to it's just a variable that depends on what's being heard, who the person is. But unless what they are learning is actively rehearsed or it is in alignment with something they need, odds are they're going to forget it. So it's a capacity issue. It takes mental effort to hold information in working memory. So what we have to do is to remember that our brains are a capacity. Even if you capture someone's attention, odds are that working memory will have them forget soon after. And they're already fatigued by how many things they're hearing and holding on to. Okay, so we know that attention is becoming harder. What do we know about how storytelling can help us make that a little bit easier and deliver the kind of message that allows customers to understand the impact that we are creating within our business? So there's something called neurocoupling that happens when we're sharing our stories with other people. And that's where the neurons fire in the same pattern as a storyteller. Now, in order for that to happen, we're engaging the emotional, the cognitive, and the neurological systems of the brain. And for a moment, we are actually in sync. On top of that, when we're able to share our stories, we are able to create a common ground with our customers. We're able to engage in the universal emotions around what it means to be human. Doing that, though, is an art form, and we're going to get into that in the next stage. When we are sharing stories that are authentic and share the human emotion, we are then able to increase the recall of that working memory that is already so hard to retain for many of the people who we are sharing the story with. So what I want to do is go ahead and jump into exploring what our brain looks like on stories. Okay, so good stories create neurological and chemical changes. I want you to think about two aspects when you share your story. Sometimes as entrepreneurs, we do really good at telling versus sharing. I've been at fault of that many times in my journey, where I begin to tell people the purpose of the company and why we're here and what we want to do, but I don't go enough into sometimes sharing that universal human experience and why we created the company, why these things are important, and going deeper beyond the story. When we tell straight facts, a neurological process happens where our brain lights up language processing and language comprehension, which is great. But in order to capture our customers' attention, we want to go into the sharing aspect. And that's where we're sharing within a structure of our story, when we're sharing the emotional journey that we're going through that is authentic to the universal human experience and our stories. Because what this does, it creates a neural activity that increases 5-fold. So this means that our brains are more activated and engaged, and we're more likely to remember what was just shared with us. So on a chemical level, we're sharing oxytocin with people that we share our stories with, when, again, we're able to share it in a structured format that is able to bring in the universal human experience. Okay, how do we do that though? That's the big question. Before we get into that, I want to just give you guys a quick principles of storytelling. We know that it's getting harder and harder to capture the attention of our customers, and we want to do it in an authentic way, and we want to do it in a way that they'll remember and in a way that is going to create an impact. As we go into that journey, I want you to remember the principles of storytelling. The principles of storytelling require context. Context requires us to think about the details of why are we even telling this story, and what is going to be the mutual outcome for our customers and also for our business. There has to be a mutual outcome. And also, is this story authentic to my journey? The journey of my personal story, and maybe even the journey of what those things look like when they combine with your business. And then ultimately, the universal human experience. This is where I want you guys to hone in and really pay attention to this one. The universal human experience is the aspect that allows us to watch movies and to feel like we were a part of it, and to cry after we've seen a movie, to feel joy for someone else when we see them accomplishing something, not because it's exactly the same to what we're living and experiencing, but because we know what it feels like to be courageous and not want to get out of a car. We know what it feels like to be fearful and doubt ourselves about our ability to wake up tomorrow and share our stories. We know what it feels like to laugh. And when we are able to connect within the universal human experience and share the emotions that everybody feels and everybody will experience through your unique lens, then you allow people to create that connection with you in what is the universal human experience. Effective stories cause us to feel emotions, and emotions heighten our ability to memorize experiences, and thus helping us improve information processing. And stories make it easier for our brains to store information that we'll later retrieve, like the name of your company, the purpose of your impact, your founder's journey. And emotions are that signal to the brain that whatever we are experiencing is important. And so we want to remember, as we're going through our journeys of creating our business, or we've been in our business for years now, what does it look like to move it forward? And what are the universal human experiences that we have opportunities to share? Okay, so let's get into crafting our story. When you look at crafting your story, there's 3 parts to it. A story. A story is something that happened, and this can be anything. I can share a story about how my cat just walked down the street and brought a squirrel back to us. Sorry, that actually did happen this morning. Now, where we make that transition into business storytelling is that it has to have a point. What's the point of the story? I know some of you guys may have experienced talking with someone before in the past, and the story can go, and you're waiting to hear about, and the point was, and sometimes we just don't get to it. A business story gets to the point. It's structured and it's relevant. So the structures are those 3 C's that we talked about earlier: the choice, the change, and the challenge, and making it relevant to the outcome of whoever is listening to the story. The link that we want to consider is different ways that we bridge our story to experiences that are happening. And we're going to get into that a little bit more. But let's take a quick look at what stories are. Again, story is anything that happened. So I want you to think about this in the sense that it doesn't have to be once upon a time, and it doesn't have to be your founder story. It can just be any conversation that you are retelling to anyone at any point. And it shares an event, it shares characters and something that happened, an adventure that was going on, a value, or just a point that you want to make. When we transition into a business story, we want to make sure that it has a point, that it's structured and it's relevant. That's where we begin to use the 3 C's. The 3 C's are the challenge. So when you're looking at the challenge, think about what was the specific challenge that you face? Why did you feel it was a challenge? What was the challenge about? Why was it your challenge? And as you move into choice, what was the specific choice that you had to make? And where did you get the courage to make that choice? Where did you get the hope? Or where are you needing to find hope? How did it feel? And the change, what occurred? What occurred within you? What occurred outside of you? How is the ripple effect of that outcome impacting not just you, but others? And what hope can it give us? What hope did it give you? What did it teach you in that change? I do want to make a point about change, is that sometimes people think the word challenge, when we're talking about challenge, sometimes people think that they need to describe misfortunes that happened in their lives. But I want you to keep in mind that a struggle is anything that might be of your choosing. It just might be trying to figure out how to move forward with your business. It doesn't have to be anything big, because we all have fears, doubts, and uncertainties. We all question ourselves. And when we can bring people in on that universal experience, it's able to help other people see themselves in your shoes and connect to your values and the journey that you're taking them on. Okay, links. This is it, y'all. Links is a hard one. This is one that I'm practicing consciously all the time. And I highly encourage you to think about how links are going to show up in your story as you learn more about what these are and what they look like. Links are analogies, metaphors, and values. Links are, how do I create different stories to share that are relevant and get to the point and have a structure? And I use links to create more experiences to share. You can use an analogy in order to share different stories. So an example of an analogy, I want to hear from you guys. What's an example of analogy? What's an analogy that you know? Let's go to the chats. I know we've said quite a bit here, and I want to hear from you guys. While you guys are typing, I'm going to throw one out there. Needle in a haystack? An old car is like a turtle? Yep, I love that. That's a new one I haven't heard. Life is like a box of chocolates. Yes. So when we're thinking about analogies and we're thinking about how can I share more of my story, what's important to me, you're eating a box of chocolates and you're enjoying it. And it's a joy to eat these boxes of chocolates. And you're thinking, wow, I don't have many choices in the chocolates that I may have wanted today, but I'm really enjoying trying one new. Sharing your experience with having that chocolate and thinking about new experiences and pushing your comfort zone is an example to share a value that you have within your business and a value that you have in your personal life. Finding analogies throughout life allows us to find more experiences to share stories. A metaphor as an example. So let's get into metaphors. It's a comparison between two things. So a metaphor that might be out there that we may have heard is, let's see, somebody give me an example of a metaphor. Okay, here's one. Somebody goes on a business trip and they go to a magic trick show. And the guy what are they called? The magicians. He calls somebody on the stage. Let's say he calls Shalia on the stage, and he gets on stage, and Shalia is a sales manager and Shalia leads a team. And it was so exciting for me to get on the stage. And I called my brother afterwards and I was like, hey, this really well-known magician called me onto the stage and he allowed me to be part of this act. And it was so neat to see how they do the disappearing act. They took me in the backstage and I was going on and on about how it felt so awesome to be considered and to have center stage. And it made me think of a metaphor of how in this example, I, as a sales manager, have to remember to also give my team center stage and to make sure that I'm finding opportunities to let them understand how our company culture is like a family. I like that, Jennifer. I'm just bridging into that one. I'm linking into that one. And how we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to take center stage, and how I felt seen while I was on stage and how important it is for me to remember to make my people feel seen. And in that example, I also want to make sure that they don't feel like this is just an act. I want them to feel like this is part of the culture. And it was a metaphor for me to remember a value that I have and how I treat my team and the kind of culture that I want to create. An early bird catches the worm. I love that one. That one's easy to remember. So as we're thinking about different analogies and metaphors, it gives us opportunities to link experiences and share them in stories. We also have our values, and this one's a big one. In order to understand the values that we can engage, we want to think about the values that we've identified that are important to us. And so as a company, one thing that I value is transparency for me. And growth. And so as I'm going through my entrepreneurial journey, it is important for me to be transparent about the growth challenges that I'm facing so that I give an opportunity for other people to feel that human experience that for me is important, and going beyond the surface level is important for me. So when I have moments of challenge, I want to make sure that I share those opportunities and not just my successes. And so every time that I'm going through this journey as a business owner, I'm thinking about how can I share these experiences with my customers and make sure that I'm not just telling them who we are and what we do, but I'm bringing in and sharing the things that are important as a business. So think about it like this. You have your story, and then you have your customer story, and there's some sort of mutual outcome within your business. Maybe perhaps you provide services and you know that you have the ability to create a mutual outcome. Ways that you can share your story outside of just your bio is looking for analogies and metaphors and values of lived experiences, looking at your company values and saying, what kind of experiences can I actually go after that help me share more stories that are true to our company's mission and that are true to the company values. Many of you have probably already used stories in this capacity where you are looking at sharing your story through elevator pitches, pitch decks, the internal stories, the origin stories, but also think about your lived everyday experiences as an entrepreneur and the values that you have and different analogies and perspectives that you have throughout your day, and link them back into a story format, sharing the universal human experience and also sharing what that looks like in your own journey. So remember, at that 35,000-foot level, our brain likes stories because clear narratives, they cut through the distractions. And the mutual value that makes it authentic for us is being able to bring it back to our own lived experiences. Okay, guys. In the beginning, I said that if science did its part right, that we were probably going to forget a big portion of what was just said. However, who remembers the fill in the blank for the following statement? That if you remember nothing at all, remember this. Stories are a blank to the what? Does anybody remember? Put it in the chats. I'd love to hear from you guys. We covered a lot of ground today, and I want to remind you guys that there's 2 parts of homework here. Yay! Somebody remembered. Yes. Y'all, really, if you remember anything at all, stories are creating a connection to the human experience. And when we can identify our story and we can audit our stories, then we can begin to more authentically share in multiple ways the different lived experiences that we're having through those links with our customers to help them remember, to help them capture their attention, because our brains are just working against us sometimes and trying to help us just survive. And we cannot blame it. It's a beautiful function. It's a double-edged sword. But that's why it's important for us to really hone in our stories, the values that are within it, audit our stories, and find different ways to continue to share our stories so that working memory also helps serve the part of creating a lasting impact for our customers. Now, what I want to do is ask you, we covered so much, but what is one thing that you're going to do today, next week, this month, that is going to help you organically share what your authentic story is with your customers, knowing that it is harder today than ever before to capture our customers' attention, for them to even remember who we are and what we do, but in a way that is authentic to you and provides a mutual outcome. Type it in the chats, create a pitch deck. That's a big one. I love that. Apply choice, change, and challenge. Yes. Matilda, becoming a better listener. That one is a big feat. And I'm so proud of you for doing that, because it is hard. I'm telling you guys, I sat in a listening workshop one time, and becoming a better listener helps us understand what our customers need and also how to share our stories through hearing others use links to share their stories. Link business values to customer outcomes. Yes. So as you're doing that, Kyle, list out what your values are in your business and start to think, what experiences can I go after that are going to help me push the boundaries of my comfort zone within this value, that I can then come back and share that story with my customers, any insights that I had, perspectives that I had, and find different ways to link different analogies and metaphors back into it so that you can create more working memory to continue to help your customers remember the impact and why you are here in your entrepreneurial journey. Oh, I love this. We're getting a lot of great things. What I want to do is go ahead and switch it back over to Colin, and I believe we're going to enter the Q&A stage. If you guys have any additional questions in there, please feel free to include them in the chat. I know we covered a lot of fast ground, but I do hope that in your entrepreneurial journey, you get so many opportunities to continue to expound on the lived experiences that you have that work not only in helping you grow your business, but also making your 80-year-old self proud.
Amazing. What a way to end. And Shalia, that was just great. And everyone's been so active in the chat. So let's jump into some Q&A. If you haven't already dropped your questions for Shalia in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, please put them in as we think about those questions. Before we do that, I'm going to launch a quick poll that helps us understand what we should be offering you, the entrepreneurs we serve, over the next couple of months. So by clicking this button, we will help you in one of these various areas. So is it sales, marketing, scale, pivot, finance, team, or just a little bit of survival? Let's see. Thank you all for voting. And I want to jump into Q&A to get to as many of them as possible. Shalia, if you want to stop sharing your screen, we could just have a Brady Bunch conversation.
Yes, that would be great.
Also, somebody asked if the slides are going to be available, and I believe so, correct?
Yeah, I'm going to do a one-pager that's going to include
great.
tips
Love it.
And all that.
Well, it looks like sales is the top of the funnel or top of the key on this poll, so we'll make sure to use that. But let's, and the recording will be available. Let's see. So somebody who is thinking about pitch decks, do you have any good resources for an awesome pitch deck for building them out?
Yeah, so StoryBrand, I love their material that they have. They also have some content on building a pitch deck that I highly recommend you check out. But also the lean canvas model is a great place to start to get, again, that big picture perspective just like it can feel really daunting when we're looking at what is our story and what are we sharing with our story, it's good to break it down into a smaller pieces that we can bite onto. And when we use the lean canvas model, it helps us really clearly and succinctly on one page see what our problem is, the solution, the value proposition that helps us then expound on it. Because if you're anything like me, I start off with one page and then end up with a whole notebook. And then it becomes a little bit harder. So hopefully I would highly encourage you do the lean canvas business model to help you really expand on it.
And Afro Butterfly LLC, lean canvas. And maybe I can ask the production team to drop a link as we roll through this Q&A. Somebody who's curious on the stats that you found for attention span. Where did you find that? Because they would love to use it.
Yes, I have so many. I will share those in the one pager. So it's a few different research articles. One of them is called Quantify, but I will share those with you guys in the one pager.
Amazing. All of this is so good. And thank you for encouraging the use of metaphors and analogies, because my team teases me all the time by like speaking in analogies and metaphors. I'm like, think about it as a mountain, right? Literally, I go on a hike every time I talk to you about anything.
Oh my gosh, I need to pick your brain on how to use more metaphors and
yeah, we could totally talk about it, but I think in imagery. So and my phone is color coded, so I just think in colors. Let's see. So in terms of connecting with strangers, conferences are becoming a new thing. Any advice around using your story to create a quicker connection other than asking about the weather or making fun of the food at the conference you're at?
yeah, that's a great point. And I think somebody mentioned listening was something that they were working on, a skill that they were working on. Asking people where they are, if you ask them, what's your current chapter of life called? It'll kind of give you insight into what they're working on. Even asking them, what's chapter 4? After they share their story, and allowing them to expound on that. And then what you're listening for is the different links that you can create too. So if they mention they're challenging their comfort zone and they want to jump off a plane, again, I'm using an extreme example, challenging your comfort zone is important to you too. And you can link into that as a value and share an experience, or even just acknowledge and validate how they might be feeling about it. And what's that experience been like for you? What change did that create? Creating a queue of questions around those chapters makes it a little bit easy for them to feel like they're obviously being heard, which is what we want to do. Hard skill, don't blame anybody. We're all working on it, but also linking it back to when the time is right to share some of your experiences.
I love that. What's your current chapter titled? Oh, I'm going to use that. That's amazing bit of advice. Ooh, there's another question here. It's using story, but they're asking, how do you discuss setbacks in a storytelling environment with consumers, partners, investors? So how do you paint that picture using story?
So I love that one. Okay. Setbacks are opportunities to show how you are willing to grow even through adversity. And setbacks allow us to see really what kind of resilience we're able to put into action. And so when we have a setback, we can show our emotional intelligence, we can show our self-awareness, we can show our ability to have conflict capacity, which are skills that are highly valuable, not just in business, but in leading teams and parenting. These are transferable skills everywhere. And so we get to show how we can speak to the fact that we have this entire business acumen and these skills that allow a business to flourish, because the reality is businesses have challenges. And when you can share the challenges that you have and share it in those 3 C's, here was a challenge that we faced. And the choice was, I wanted to hide in the closet and not handle it, but I knew the change that I wanted to make was this important, which is why I'm still here today. And which is why I want to make this kind of impact. Using those 3 C's to help guide that conversation and keep it structured and relevant will help move the conversation in a constructive way that also shows your self-awareness.
I think that's really great advice. And I've heard somebody who wasn't as eloquent as you say something along the lines of, honesty is really key when describing setbacks because they'll find out if you're lying later.
Mm. But you know what, Colin, with that question, this is where we can think about mutual outcome. What's the context of why we're even sharing this? The context is, let's say perhaps they're an investor, right? And they want to understand what our capabilities are. That sets the stage for the rules of engagement. We already know there's a mutual outcome. They want to know that you can produce an investment for them. And so context and mutual outcome helps us put into perspective how and what we share in the story.
I love that. And then there's a question here that's on a little bit of a different, in a different lane, but I think would be important for people to hear. And I'd love to hear your perspective on it. What are some of the different leadership styles or quality that you've seen success with?
You know, I think it really depends again on context, because context sets a stage. If I am leading an elementary school teacher as opposed to a prison, my leadership style is going to be two different kind of things, right? My communication is going to be slightly a little bit different because you adjust to the environment. But what's always there are your values, the values of how you choose to engage with humans. And for me, it's always about making a conscious impact as much as possible while not taking myself too serious, and also being able to create a mutual outcome for everyone involved. Leadership styles were evolved during times from history when leadership was still being used in war era. And so in the beginning, when leadership styles were born, people were thinking about how can I be like the other last great war hero? And they wanted to literally mirror exactly everything that they did. If I eat like them, I'm like them. If I communicate like them, I'm like them. But we know in today's world, that's not how it is. Leadership styles are born out of context from the environment that you're in, but they're infused with our values of how we engage with people. The style just depends on what are the realities of your environment, what outcome are you trying to drive, and what are the rules of engagement.
Oh, I love that. And what a great way to wrap. I could spend so much more time learning from you, but really appreciate you sharing your time, some of your lived experiences, and of course your expertise with all of us. I'm sure the attendees and everyone on the team is very grateful from learning from you. We're getting a bunch. Thank you. This was great. This is amazing. This is so good. Thank you so much. This is awesome. So we're getting a ton. And yeah, I just really appreciate you coming to share your wisdom with us today.
Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to be a part of your journey.
I love it. Well, speaking of journeys, we've got a bunch more webinars coming on that hopefully will help you with your entrepreneurial journey. So check those out. We'll drop a link for the upcoming webinars. And we'd love to hear your feedback. So if there are any courses that you haven't seen that you'd love to see, please give us some feedback in those. But on behalf of everyone on our team and everyone in attendance, Shalea, thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one, everyone. We'll see you online soon.